Welcome to the common chaos of sisterhood.
I'm Haley.
And I'm Amy.
Come hang out with us.
Grab your drinks and get comfy.
And let's get into it.
Welcome and thank you for coming to hang out with us for our first episodes of Common Chaos of Sisterhood. Today we are going to be talking about our unbreakable bond as sisters, the road that we took to get here, and what's made it so strong. Stick around with us to the end of this episode to be able to find out what kind of topics and what things we're going to talk about in the next few episodes. And I really hope you enjoy this.
So, kind of getting started from like the very beginning. So, we're 5 years apart, right? So,
Mhm.
when I was born, you being 5 years old, do you remember like anything, like any changes? Like, do you actually remember when I was born or when I was like really little or no?
The one of the main things that I do remember is I don't remember you coming home and I don't remember mom being pregnant, but I do remember mom bringing home a blue, like a blue and purple spotted little dog. Like it was just this little puppy,
Mm-hmm.
stuffed animal, and it was white with blue and purple spots, and we named him Spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I had him for years. Like, I had him for years. It was my comfort stuffed animal,
I think I remember that.
and there is so many times that mom had it ended up being completely shredded, but the dogs got a hold of it. It tore off its nose because it had, like, a hard nose, tore off its eyeballs, like, different times, and we had end up its whole face was stitched up. It had no face.
The poor dog.
Yeah, that's the main thing I remember about you coming home.
Mm-hmm.
Mom would always tell me, like, if any time that I would be around you, it was my baby. You're my baby. Anyone that would want to, like, hold you or play with
Mm-hmm.
you, no, my baby.
It seems still true to this day.
Yes, you're mine. All mine.
I don't really remember a whole lot. Being in our first house, um, I do remember having headless Barbies. That is one thing I remember from the first
Yeah.
house. You tearing my heads off my Barbies. Um,
Do you remember chewing on the feet and the hands?
yes, because I did that even in the second house, as I was
Okay,
insane.
so these poor Barbies were completely dilapidated, and she was a goat.
Like a little gerbil. And then I don't really remember a lot of the stories y'all tell, but I do hear stories of me chewing on more than just Barbie heads.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this child would chew on our so me and our older brother, we had a setup to where it was like an older TV and we had a Super Nintendo. And she had chewed like she chewed the cords. Like it was wires. She chewed through wires. And so we ended up having to get more controllers and we would give her the controller that she had like the wire that she had chewed off of, and she would pretend that she's playing games with us, because she could plug it in, we couldn't do anything with it, so that was her toy, her chewed up, remote control for our Super Nintendo.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Do you remember your friend,
Oh.
your special imaginary friend? Do you remember that?
Yes, so I did have an imaginary friend. Her name was Shauna. Um, I don't know how other people's imaginary friends work, but I've heard people talking about how like they like their imaginary friend grows up with them. No, mine didn't. Um, Mine was like an adult.
Yeah, hers, it traumatized me. I'm pretty sure it was some kinda ghost or demon, that she was talking to. This girl, she would go and say, "Shauna spend the night tonight," and mom like, "Oh, that's sweet. Your friend spend the night." And I'm like, "Oh no, please no." And she'll look straight at me. "She's sleeping in your bed tonight." Like, "What?"
Shauna
And
was
so
my
I
best
would I
friend.
would end up sleeping in with Haley. I'd end up sleeping in her bed because this imaginary friend had taken over my bed. And there'd be stories. She has a dog. She has a little sister and a little brother. Her
Um,
parents aren't there anymore.
she had, 4 siblings.
Oh, I'm sorry, she had 4 siblings, she had 4 siblings.
She had 2 older sisters, an older brother, and then a younger brother, which was the baby. And then
And they all died, by the way. They all died.
I
They're all dead.
I don't
Yeah.
know why. I decided that happened. But yeah, her parents died. She died. Her siblings died. And that's how I got rid of my imaginary friend.
No, 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 no. She stuck around after she died. She stuck around, and you would tell me she was sticking around. She's still here.
I don't remember that.
Like, that was probably the most scariest thing growing up, was being terrified of something that I could not see.
You're welcome for traumatizing you.
And you know what's funny? My daughter does the same freaking thing.
I'm sorry, she's so similar to me.
But she doesn't it's not imaginary friend, it doesn't have a name. It's the kitchen ghostes,
The
the
kitchen.
black kitchen ghostes, the black shadows. In our house in Italy, it was, um, my grandma, and it was this old lady that would sit at our dining room table, and she would describe exactly what she looked like, and I'm like, "No, not again. I can't do this again." So thank you for passing that on to my daughter.
You're welcome. We have uh, amazing imaginations, apparently. We
Mm.
can see things.
You know,
Oh
seeing things, scaring the crap out of me.
my. Oh my
So
goodness.
Shauna survived until,
Oh my goodness.
let's say until the second house. That would
Yeah,
be when I was in middle school.
yeah. So Shauna survived until the second house. She probably, I think I killed her off, in
Ah.
like, um, third grade, fourth grade, something like that. I don't
Yeah.
remember.
So being in the like, we're in the new house now.
Mhm.
What are some things that you really remember then? Like, do you have any more memories that now that you're older?
Right. The biggest memory, and I think it was just because it was traumatizing. Was when I got bit by the snake.
Yeah.
That was terrifying. Um,
Terrifying for you. I was angry.
yeah,
I was so
I was
angry.
gonna ask how you like, cause I don't think I've ever actually asked how like what you were feeling at the time.
Well, my baby sister comes in screaming. Dad goes outside with, like, barefoot
Mm-hmm.
looking for, like, a scorpion or something because there was, like, a bunch of scorpions out, by where we lived, and he came across the copperhead, and he killed it, and he's like, "Okay, you need to go." So you, mom, and our aunt that lived next door took them, and I wanted to go. My like, again, possessive, my baby is like, my little baby sister, she's hurt, she's puking her guts up, she can't walk, like, what's wrong with her? And it was I didn't know what was going on. It's bedtime, like, it's time to go to bed, like, we have school, like, we had, like, and I had no idea what was going on, I was kinda in the dark. I have heard stories about what happened in the hospital.
Mm.
But I was angry. I was very I'm still a little salty about it, but I was angry.
uh, so it's real funny though because yes, like in the moment, like it was very painful, um, but the weird thing is like a lot like the from the moment it happened, um, to getting to the hospital was honestly a huge blur. The only thing I remember when I was in the hospital and I was fine because I was coming over from our aunt's house because we were about to go on vacation. Literally the next day we were about to leave. And I was going with my aunt, my cousin, and my uncle to go to the beach and go on vacation. And all I
Mhm.
could think was, I don't get to go on vacation now. And I was
You know
so
what I thought? I
mad.
don't ever get to go on vacation with them.
I was
You know, it
so
serves you
mad.
right to be bitten by that snake.
That's so rude. I was so mad because I couldn't go and like yeah. But that was probably like the most like traumatizing memory from.
And then they brought the snake with you to the hospital
Oh yeah, uh-huh.
and kept it in your room.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was put in a one of those the hospital cups, you know?
Mhm.
Because we brought it with us, so they knew what kind of snake it was, yada yada yada. And so we had it, and
Which,
they
side note, if you ever get bit by a snake or a spider, make sure if you are able to catch it, take it with you to the hospital so they know what
yes,
it is.
yes, and do not put ice on a snake bite. It is it hurts so much worse putting ice on it than just letting it be. It was very painful. Um, but so we had the snake. They just kept the snake with us. I don't know why. And about I don't know how many times this happened, but a every once in a while a male nurse would come in to our room and they'd be like, "Hey, I heard you had like a snake in you. Like, do you still have the snake?" And we're like, "Yeah, it's like over there." And by the way, I was 7 at the time this happened. Um, and they would come in, and I'm like nervous because I don't like hospitals. And he would come in. He was like, "Hey, do you still have the snake?" And we're like, "Yeah, I still have the snake." And he's like, "Can I borrow it?" I guess so. Yeah, take it. And Mom was like,
Have
"Yeah,
fun.
sure, sure." Um, and about 5 minutes after they leave, you just hear one of the lady nurses down the hallway screaming. And about 2 seconds later, the male nurse will come back in with "thank you" and just put it back on our counter. You're welcome. And that happened so many times. It
Yeah.
was so
I
funny.
remember coming see I think I was able to see you once, but I remember being so scared and just so mad that my baby sister is in the hospital and there's nothing I can do.
Yeah, yeah. So, what is one memory that you remember in the house, in the second house, after we had moved, that like was like funny or yeah, let's say funny. What's a funny memory?
Funny?
Yeah,
Uh, I don't
I
know,
don't know.
it's funny, everyone else thinks it's funny. You have stupid Zuzu pets.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah, like, it's not
It
funny,
is
like, to me, but
hilarious.
it was funny to everyone else. Haley had these Zuzu pets that, um, they would just randomly go off. They would go off in the middle of the night, and they would run around underneath my bed. They would be off, and they won't go on for hours, but in the middle of the night, for some reason, they would go off and go up underneath my bed, 'cause, okay, we had bunk beds, and it wasn't, like, one on top of the other. It was the tall one was up against the wall, and the bottom one was up against the other wall, kinda, like, halfway up underneath the bunk bed.
Like the head was the only thing that was under the top one was like the head part, like the
Yes,
headboard.
just the head part. Yep, and then our dresser was right next to it.
Mhm.
But it would go up underneath the bed, and I would have to fish it out in the middle of the night, and I'd turn it off, put it back in the toy box, and it just multiple times in a row, just kept happening. So I would catch them, I would find them, and I would throw them out in the hallway. And, like, it would make it into, like, the kitchen, living room area because, I got tired of it, and mom and dad would come up in the morning, "Why are there toys out here?" "Because they go off in the middle of the night and they don't shut up."
And it wasn't my fault.
Okay, those things were possessed. I don't know, and they only went under my bed. They would go from the toy area to under my bed. No matter where they were turned, they would do the little turn spinny things, and they'd go straight under the bed.
Do you remember my Furby that I begged
Oh
for?
my oh, I hated that thing. You hated that thing.
I begged for it. I kept seeing commercials for it. There were commercials everywhere for them, and I was like, I want one so bad. And I got it, and I played with it for a few times, and then it creeped me out. So it just sat there,
Mhm,
and it would
yep,
randomly go off. Like I didn't ever touch it, and it just randomly go.
yeah. That's also another reason why Anne-Marie doesn't have any toys like that just randomly go off, or, like, any doll type toys that will go off, 'cause I can't do it. I cannot deal with it.
Yeah. Um. Yeah.
So once I hit high school, that's when, like, we hit high school, after the, snake bite incident, and you were going into junior high.
Yeah, so well, I was trying to think because my your senior year I was in 7th grade. So your
Mm.
freshman year I was going into 4th grade? No, 3rd grade.
4th?
7th.
I don't know. We have to math it.
I was in 4th grade. I was in 4th grade.
So going into my freshman year, you would have been 4th grade.
4th grade. Mhm.
Okay, so when I was going into high school, I started color guard. I started I was in art competitions. I was at home less. What do you remember about all that time and
Um so um what I remember is so like after we had moved. So after we had moved and like after like a whole snake bite incident and stuff like that, we were still super close and like attached like at the hip. Once
yeah,
you
yeah.
once you got into high school and you started because like you said color guard and your art competitions, you were gone all the time for practices and hanging out with your friends and stuff like that. And I started seeing you less and it was different. It was weird, but like I wasn't completely like devastated or harping on it, but I it was weird. Like you not being there
Mm,
all the time because you were always there all
yeah.
the time. Your fresh like your the first part of your high school years, like you were there like every night. So and most of the time I ended up in your bed anyway.
Yeah.
So like we still had
And
that.
whether it be it was her she couldn't sleep or I couldn't sleep,
Mhm.
we ended up sleeping in the same bed. Why we didn't just have one bed, I don't know.
We were attached at the hip. um, but so like it wasn't. I I think about now, like then I was kind of sad because weren't as home as often.
Mhm.
But I think about it now, it's like I wasn't like it wasn't as bad as it had seemed at the time. You not being there as often because like I said, you were there every night. And
Mm.
like you did like you would like come home and we would have that time spent together. But I just remembered this. Speaking of the room and sharing a bed, um, because of you, I am
Uh-huh.
now and still scared of coyotes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It was very rude. She would used to um there we lived near like a bunch of like wooded area and stuff like that, so our bedroom was in the back of the house and our window faced out towards like the woods and stuff like that, and almost every night without fail you would hear coyotes howling, and they would freak me out, and she made matters worse by telling me that they were going to come and they were going to eat me. And
Okay,
it didn't.
my defense, you wouldn't shut up. It was bedtime, lights were out, I was half asleep, and you would just sit there and talk and sing and put on a show, and no, lay down, shut up, and go to sleep.
But not only did you tell me that they were going to come and eat me, you also slept with the window open almost every night. And that made it worse.
It needed the airflow, and
And
you were silent,
it's so
so they
mean.
wouldn't come find you.
That is so mean. Oh my
Uh,
goodness. So mean.
um, about that same time, when I was the first few years of high school, I remember complaining to mom. Um, and it probably goes with not seeing you as much.
Mhm.
But I was like, why is she copying me? Like everything I would do, you would copy me. But when I started wearing what I was my wardrobe hasn't changed. It's hoodies, shorts, hoodies, and jeans. That's my wardrobe.
Mhm.
And your wardrobe's always been pretty and pink and showy.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, you just started wearing darker colors, wearing hoodies. putting your hair up in a ponytail like I would, and I'm like, "Okay, what is going on with Haley? Like, what is happening? She's not being herself, she's not what is going on?" And so I would make a point to make sure I would come home if I was at the competition, bring you home some souvenirs or something like that,
Mhm.
because, like, I had that sister guilt so bad.
I aspired to be you. When I say that I looked up to you, like you were like this, I had you placed on this pedestal, like this tower, this like pedestal. And you were like, I wanted to be exactly like you. Like the way you dressed, the way you looked. When I started doing my makeup, the way you did your makeup. Like I was so jealous of you and I wanted to be just like you growing up. I don't know why.
See, that's when I had that protective wall up.
Mm.
And I hid everything from everyone. I hid everything from you,
Mm-hmm.
anything that coulda hurt you, anyone that coulda hurt you. I was that wall, and you didn't have to deal with that.
Right.
I remember when we were on the bus one time, and you were this little kid, and there's this high schooler just was just cussing in the back. He was super annoying, like, he was a senior on the bus.
Yeah.
Like, he was super annoying, he was cussing, and you jumped up off your seat, and you said, "Those aren't Jesus words. Stop it." And I'm sitting there like, "Okay, I'm about to get in a fight with this high schooler, and I'm in junior high. What do I do?" And he gets up and starts screaming in your face, so I get up and start screaming in his face. Like, it's those kinda things that I was that wall, I was that protector.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of my fault because coming into my second half of high school, I was no longer able to put up that wall and be that I felt like I fell off your pedestal and I fell hard.
Yeah. That So that was probably the hardest part. When I was saying earlier, like you, when you were home as much because you had the competitions, but you're home every night. That was like the beginning of high school. When you got later into high school, especially like your senior year, you were gone all the time. You didn't come
Mhm,
home, like, and that's when we moved to the house we're in now. Was your senior
mhm,
year, and I felt like I had just lost all connection with you and I felt like we were starting to drift apart and
mhm,
like it was rough for me because I was doing stuff cuz I was in band, I was in like a
mhm,
bunch of different stuff like and I had stuff to occupy my mind, but then I would come home and it was just me. We went from having mom,
mhm,
dad, you, our brother, like a house full like 5 people and
mhm.
then it was just me and that was probably one of the hardest transitions I had to go through
Yeah,
being an only child essentially.
yeah. And that was also when I developed an eating problem.
Mm-hmm.
I was super sick. I couldn't keep any food down. Um, and like I said, I fell off that pedestal and I fell hard,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't tell anyone that what I was going through. I didn't tell anyone about my depression. I didn't tell anyone about anything.
Right.
Um, and if I could go back and talk to myself and tell me, like, it's okay not to be okay and, like, talk to somebody. You have your sister. You have this person that loves you. You don't have to be strong for her all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have helped, but I fell and I fell hard. The first time I went to the hospital, when I was at work, when my organs were shutting down, were you let know about that, or was it until
um
after?
I knew so really the only thing I knew is I knew that you had passed out at work and that you had gone to the hospital, but I didn't actually learn about like really the ins and outs of anything until I got like to later years until we came back and like actually reconnected and you
Mhm,
told me about it. That I but at the time I was in junior high at the time. I think
yeah.
it was
I
seventh
remember
grade.
there's times that you sit there and force feed me, and, like, immediately I would go throw it up, but, like,
Right.
mom would try, my boyfriend, my husband now at the time would try, and
Mhm.
it was really hard, it was a really hard time, but eventually I got better, I got help,
Mhm.
and then I got into my car accident.
Yeah.
I was going to college, I was doing good, I was making straight A's, going in for law enforcement, and then I got in a car accident.
No.
Um, I remember that day like it was yesterday. It was terrifying.
Oh, I bet. I didn't actually know about it the day it happened. I
Yeah.
didn't I didn't learn about it until probably a week or a week and a half after it happened. I got called up into the um the office when I was at school, and they told me that, hey, your aunt's gonna be picking you up. I was like, okay. I was like, that's not an unusual thing. We live right next door to them. Like, it wasn't an unusual
Mm,
thing. And well, when I got picked up, they're like, "Oh, you're just gonna stay with us for a few days." And I was like, "Oh, okay, awesome." Like, I was really close with my cousin, so I was perfectly okay with spending the week with him. I didn't think anything of it.
mm,
And then about a weekend, I was like, um, my aunt called me to the side and handed me the phone. I said, "This is your mom. She wants to talk to you." And so I picked up the phone, and it was my mom, and she told me that you had gotten into a car accident. You were fine, everything was okay, but you had broken your back. And as soon as I heard the words car accident, yes, like at the time we weren't as close as
mhm.
we used to be, but it almost felt like my world was about to just come to pieces.
Yeah, it was just you
Like,
realizing how important,
yeah,
um
and it was just like, and um, I so after you had left the hospital and you were on the way home, um, we were able to meet at um we were able to meet
so
you on
we
the way
met the
home.
bank.
Yeah, it was at the bank near the house, and my aunt took me there, and we had met you, and you were in Mimi's van, and they opened the back door, and you were just sitting there in a back brace, and you looked like you were in so much pain, and it was like at
That
the
was the most painful ride I have ever taken in my life.
I couldn't imagine.
Like, my so when Mimi hates remembering what happened. She's like, "I have never heard you scream so much in my life," 'cause she was the one driving.
Hmm.
And she was saying we lived out in the country down the back road, so there was potholes, there was twists and turns. It was miserable. And after that, I really don't remember, like, whole 2 whole months just because of, like, the medicines I was on, and I
Hmm.
don't remember much. Remember being like, having to be bathed. That was very demeaning.
I think
But
for majority of your healing process as well, I wasn't home. I was for majority of it. I was at our aunt's house.
yeah.
Which honestly, I think about it now is probably the best place for me because I don't think I would have been
Mm.
okay being here and seeing how much pain you were in and not being able to do anything. Like that was probably the best place for me. Um,
I feel like shout out to mom, like, I feel so bad.
yeah.
Mom was my main caretaker. She would get up in the middle of the night, make sure I had my medicine. She had to dress me, she had to shower me, she had to brush my hair. She had to do, like, every single thing for me, and it was demeaning, I hated it, but, I'm so thankful for that I had her. There was times because I had to sleep in a recliner because I had to sleep sitting up. And for some reason, I would put my arm would get stuck in the back brace, and the back brace closed and opened in the back, so I couldn't undo it, and I hated that thing. But, so I couldn't undo it, so I was stuck, and then I would because the meds I'm on, and I have really bad anxiety, I have depression, and that's something that we can get into later.
Hmm.
But, I would go into a full panic attack,
Yeah.
and because I felt trapped, I couldn't move, so mom would have to undo my brace, which hurt so bad, and pull my arm out
Mhm.
and, like, buckle it back up. But that it was I am glad you weren't there for it, but then again, I wish you were more involved in that
Right,
because
right.
that was the breaking point because that's when I didn't see you at all,
Mhm.
and once I was able to heal, I moved in with Aaron, got engaged,
Yep.
got married, and, like, I got started getting a little healthier. I unfortunately was addicted to the pain meds and the muscle relaxers, so I was fighting through that. But that was the down part of my life, and that was the breaking point for us. We
Mhm.
just weren't close anymore.
Yeah. That was cuz I'm trying to remember. Trying to think back of what I remember after the car accident cuz like I said I was not for majority of your healing I wasn't here. Um I remember you being in the back brace. I remember during Christmas you were in the back brace during like the holidays and stuff like that. Like I
Mm.
remember all of that, but it was you weren't home. You were like you said like right almost right after like I think it was while you were healing too. You had moved in with Aaron and then you got
That was
engaged.
in part of my healing process,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and then you got engaged and then you moved.
Yeah, we moved to Fort Hood.
Mhm. And it was like just one after the other and that's where like I we seriously just started drifting so far apart. Um
Do you remember what brought us back together?
Um, finding out that you were pregnant with Anne Marie.
Yes.
Because I had because we you still came up like every other weekend. Like it wasn't
Mhm,
like you were completely gone and moved so far away. Like you lived like what was like 2 hours away.
mhm.
And like you would come up like almost every other weekend. We would go and visit you. So it was like we still had a little bit of a connection there, but we weren't
But it
as
was, like,
close.
small talk. It wasn't what we used to have.
Exactly.
It was, "Hi, how are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You're going great in school." And then I was still running through kinda, like, rehabbing myself, getting off meds and all that.
Right.
Um, that's the reason why I didn't know I was pregnant. And when y'all came down for dinner, like, to drop you off at my house, dad was like, "Are you sure you're not pregnant?" Because I thought I was just getting sick again and not being able to eat again and
Mm-hmm.
going through, like, kinda reverting back to what I was because I was losing weight. I was
Mm-hmm.
getting, like, my face was getting thinner again. And I thought I was just getting sick again, and I didn't know what to do. And I was like, "No, I'm not pregnant. I can't." Like, "No, no." And on the way home after dinner, they went home. I was taking you to my house. You were like, "Sissy, why don't you stop at, like, Walgreens and CVS, get a pregnancy test?"
Yeah.
And that night, I came out, and I can't remember what my reaction was just straight up, I think, shock,
I think so. I don't remember.
and I just, like, looked at you and broke down crying, and that, like, I ended up, like, I was laying in your lap crying when I found out I was pregnant.
And can I say I was like the happiest person in the world? My niece, other than you, I would say Anne Marie is probably like the closest person. Like I would
Yeah, like,
die
your
for that
world.
child.
Yeah, but so that was our breaking point, and then my daughter is what brought us back
hmm
together.
Yeah. So
Um,
because after you found out you were pregnant, um, he, you ended up moving back up here.
yeah, so I found out I was pregnant. I came back for Christmas and the holidays
hmm
because, um, uh, my husband had leave, which is, like, vacation time, but he ended up having to go back, so I stayed up there with y'all. Um, and then during the whole pregnancy, we're back and forth. After I had Anne-Marie, 2 weeks later, he was shipped off to, South Korea.
Right. That's what I was thinking. I couldn't remember.
Mhm.
I couldn't
He
remember
was
when you moved
deployed,
back.
so when she was 2 weeks old, and so that's when I moved back, I moved in with Mimi.
hmm And honestly, that whole situation, you moving back, is probably like was not the most ideal situation of you having like you moving back, your husband not being with
Yeah.
you. You just had a baby. Like, it probably was not the most ideal situation, but I think that was probably the thing that brought us closer.
Oh, yeah. Because I struggled, like, my postpartum was rough. It was rough.
Yes.
Um, you have those 2 kinds of parents, and mom guilt was heavy, was heavy for me,
Mm-hmm.
'cause you have those 2 kind of parents that well, multiple kinds, but 2 majors, like, when you have a baby, it's either keep them close, like, "This mine, don't touch him," or they start kinda rejecting who they are, and unfortunately, that's the group that I was in. I didn't really reject her, like, she was my kid, I was taking care of her, I would protect her, but I didn't have a bond with her, and I think it might have been because I was so young, um, but I didn't have a bond with her, and I didn't know what to do, so I started working, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when I started working at the school, and so between Mimi and our aunt, they took care of her, which amazing. I'm so glad that I had these people in my life to help me get through that.
Mm-hmm.
But if it wasn't for you sitting down with me and actually like not really yeah, kind of helping raise my daughter for the first year like 10 months of her life,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have gotten a bond with her. And I think bonding with her was also time I was bonding with you.
Yeah. Um. So actually, between that, I think because before you had her, I'll go back in time a little bit. Before you had her, because you had came back and then moved back to Fort Hood again. Was that before you had her, or was that after you had her?
That was after.
Was it
Because
after?
I because what we did was I moved down to Fort Hood.
Mm-hmm.
I came back for the holidays. I had Anne Marie, moved back, and then we, moved back to Fort Hood, and then we came back, and we were
Okay.
pretty much couch jumping because we were supposed to be stationed overseas,
Mm-hmm.
but it kept getting delayed,
Mm-hmm.
and so we have already gotten rid of the house and everything, so we were kinda just living there,
Mm-hmm.
um, while we were trying to get overseas.
Right, because you had your first. Because I just remembered you had her first birthday in Fort Hood. So
Yes.
that second time, so after she was born and after we had gotten a whole lot closer
Mhm.
and we started getting back to kind of where we were um before all that happened. Um the first time you moved to Fort Hood, it really did not like affect me too much. Like you
Yeah.
weren't hardly ever home. So like when you moved, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, she's moved. Um, when you moved the second time, um,
After I had Emery.
after you had Anne Marie, I
Mhm.
vividly remember this. I was washing the dishes. I was loading the dishwasher. I put a plate in. This was like a couple days after you had left. We already said our goodbyes, whatnot. And it's not like you were like going so far away. You were like going back to where you were like 2 hours away.
Yeah.
And I vividly remember I put a plate in the dishwasher and it hit me. And I was just kind of thinking, I was like, oh, I'm gonna miss them, you know. And I was like, they're they're gone. Like they're not here. They're not gonna just. I can't just go like walk into the other room and see them. Like
Yeah.
they're gone. And I literally started bawling that second time that you had moved out. And I
Yeah.
think that one really hit me that okay, we've got that relationship back.
Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong, I was so happy to be able to, like, have, like, our family in our own house, and
Right.
it was really hard not having that village, that having those people around
Yeah.
that I had with Anne-Marie.
Yeah.
Um, but they get that it was hard for me too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then we had Anne-Marie's first birthday at that house, and then we got orders to go overseas. When we were moving to Italy, I think that was really hard. That was hard because we were excited and we had plans, but, like, those plans just
Yeah.
never came
Yeah,
true.
yeah. I was excited for you to be able to like go and see and experience like a whole other world essentially. But I was like because still you were 2 hours away, so I could just, be We would go down, you would
Oh,
come
come
up,
see you,
like
yeah.
yeah. And realized I can't do that. That has to be a lot of planning, money to be able to actually go like. And I was that was probably what hit me worse. Honestly, was
Yeah,
going
and at one
overseas.
point, so we were there for 3 years,
Mhm.
and at one point, we were saving money to be able to fly you out,
Mhm.
and because of the pandemic and the airlines being closed,
Yeah.
you were not able to come visit.
Mhm. Because
Um
I was supposed to because y'all were talking about me going over there this spring break, during spring break of my senior year.
Mhm. That or
Which
during the summer.
yeah, which was 2020. I
Mhm.
unfortunately did graduate during 2020. Um, and
And I missed the graduation, I couldn't come see your
yeah,
graduation.
there was a whole lot of stuff that just didn't happen. Um, and so when like you were talking about it, I was like, oh, like I'm so excited. Like I would love to because like there was like this piece of me that was missing, and it was all the way across the
Yeah.
world. um, and so like I was so excited, and then the pandemic hit, and it was like, great, now I can't do anything.
Yeah. But 3 years later, we came back because, my like, we got early return, me and my daughter, so 'cause for Anne Marie, she was starting school, so we came home early, and, my husband had to stay. He was only supposed to stay for, like, 6 months, but it ended up being, like, a year and a half,
Mm-hmm.
and we moved in with you.
Yep.
I think that right there is what 100%, like, what we are now is because we lived
Mm-hmm.
together for a year and a half.
Absolutely, absolutely. So like, we were talking about how we got closer and whatnot, and then you moved, and it was like that little break. We had become closer, but when you came back, and it was like we were spending time. We were literally with each other 24/7.
We shared a room again,
Yes, we did. We gave the baby her own room, and we shared a room
and we
again.
shared our own room.
But I can just say real quick. When you left, that baby was 1, and when she came back, she was 4.
Yeah,
That's
she was
not.
almost 5.
That's not okay. I'm.
Yeah.
I missed too much of that.
Yeah, 2 mo through 3 months later, when we moved back, we had
Mm,
her 5th birthday.
yep. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and and Anne Marie became, like, really, really close with you,
Mm.
and then I feel like there's a pattern of me just leaving. I think I have a problem with me just leaving. Is it
Well,
my fault? Am I the problem?
no, it's your husband.
Am I the villain?
Yeah, me.
But we spent the last year and a half, like, inseparable.
Mm.
And when you found out I was moving, like, to another state,
Mm.
how did that make you feel? Am I the villain?
It's your fault. Um, no, so I had actually, when you moved back, part of that year and a half, I had actually moved
Yes.
to be closer to school and to
Mm,
closer to my job. And so there was about a 10-month span where I was not living here, but I was here almost every weekend. I was here almost every,
mhm,
like, there would be like probably a month. I would go probably about a month sometimes without coming back just because of work and stuff. But
yeah.
I,
But you were home every weekend,
almost every
only
weekend.
gone during the school days, which was the days that I worked.
Right, right. And so like I feel like that wasn't such a hindrance on our relationship. When you said that you were moving, cuz you had already talked about um moving and then the possible places you could move, and like you
Mhm.
had mentioned, I think one of them was what, Colorado.
Colorado, I think
Mhm.
Alaska was in there,
Yeah.
Fort Hood was back in there again. Um, there was a couple places that
Mhm.
were possibility.
And not gonna lie, I was kind of praying for the Colorado or for Hood, because I was like, I can drive there. But no, you
Yeah.
had to go and move 17 hours away to North Carolina.
Yeah.
No, that was,
But it's nice here, it's pretty.
yeah. I was like, the day y'all left, like I told y'all bye and whatnot, and I was like, I'm okay, I'm gonna be fine, I'm okay. I was not okay. I watched y'all drive off, and I started crying, and y'all's bed, your bed was still there, and like you said, some blankets. I literally went and laid in
Mm.
that bed and cried.
Aw.
I
You know, it
was
was
like,
funny when we were driving away, we were around the corner, I looked over at Erin, and I was like, "She's crying."
that's so
And he was like, "How
mean.
do you how," I was like, "How do you know?" I'm like, "Because she's still probably still standing in the driveway."
That's so mean. You're so mean. So
Well, it means
sympathetic.
we love each other. But
um,
where do you see us being, like, 5 years from now? Do you see me leaving and coming back and leaving and coming back and still being the villain in our story?
Honestly, probably. I mean, cause you never know. Um, no, because I still have to finish college. Hopefully, in the next 5 years, I do finish college,
Mhm.
and graduate. Um,
And then you'll have your life started, and you'll
ex-
have your family and married and all
exactly.
that.
Right. Exactly. So I like we're both probably right now we're on like different little steps.
Yeah, points of our life.
Yeah, different points in our life, and then like at some point I'm gonna catch up a little bit, and we're gonna be right there, and then we're gonna like it's gonna be even harder because you have a family and I'm gonna have a family.
Let's just buy a whole piece of land, kind of compound. You're on that side of the land, we're on this side, and we just live on the
You
same piece of
know,
land.
I'm for that. Let's do it. Oh my goodness, I'm down. But yeah,
But
I don't think that we are gonna let our bond and our relationship get as far as it did, because I feel like when you left and we had that breaking point and like that the breaking point in our relationship and our bond, I feel like we
mm,
needed it
yeah,
because
I think everyone needs a little bit of a break.
yeah, because we went from being the younger sister, being the little sister, you being the older sister, having that dynamic and having that role, and then we broke apart, whatnot, and then we come back together. We didn't come
As
back together,
adults,
right. We didn't come back together as little sister and older sister. We came back together as adults, as best
women, like a
friends.
grown woman.
Exactly, and I feel like we really needed that because if we didn't have that, I feel like the our dynamic would be a whole lot different
Yeah.
than it is
And the
right
fact that our roles have completely switched. I was the wall, the protector, letting nothing pass to get to you, and now I've fallen off that pedestal very hard, and now you're the one that's like, "It's gonna be okay. You're my wall, you're my leading post, you're my protector."
now.
Um,
I think we're
I'm supposed to be the oldest one, but
I think we're each other's leaning post at this point. There is no,
yeah, it's
there's
like we're
no,
both exhausted, just leaning up against each other.
there's no like hierarchy or like who's like above each other. I think we're at the point where we're right next to each other and we are using each other as leaning posts. We're using each other as those protectors and our
Yeah.
shields.
Well, where do we go from here? Okay.
um. Well. Um. Okay, hold on. I got it. Don't worry, I got it.
Okay.
Maybe. um, and hopefully within the next 5 years, this podcast continues. I would like it to
Yes.
continue because I feel like this is going to give us more of an excuse to spend more time together
Mhm.
and to kind of continue keeping that bond together.
Oh,
Because
yeah, and whether people are actually watching or not, like, it
right,
gives us an excuse to get together and just talk about anything and
absolutely,
everything.
absolutely, and like I feel like that's one thing that we kind of hurt us a little bit is because we didn't have really hardly any connection, any like way to get a hold of each other and do something like
Mhm.
this. I feel like this is going to give us an excuse and give us a way to actually continue building that bond together. And for those that are listening, we pretty much will talk about anything. Anything from true crime to just everyday life, probably maybe books. So we'll be talking about pretty much anything and everything. Yeah.
And if you have any recommendations or suggestions or stuff that you wanna hear or questions that you have for us, feel free to get a hold of us. We
Absolutely.
can, put that in our podcasts. We have a couple of episodes coming up. There are gonna be some questions, there's gonna be some true crime,
Hmm.
there's gonna be some there you know what? There could be laughter, there could be tears, like, we don't know, but the next upcoming episodes, I think, are gonna be kinda insightful on kinda who we are, and, hopefully, y'all are enjoying this as much as we are, and I hope y'all have a fantastic day, and we look forward to seeing y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Woohoo.
Don't forget to come hang out with us every Thursday when we talk about the common chaos of sisterhood.